What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Social City Podcast. I'm your host, Old School Omar. This is my beautiful wife. She don't need no further introduction. Y'all know who she is. At Aubi. Say what's up to the people, boo.
What's up, people?
On today's episode, we're going to be chatting about breaking generational curses. We'll get into Obsession of the Week and close out with some gratitude. But first, got to give a shout out to the sponsor, TriPoint Insurance, y'all. Today's episode is sponsored by TriPoint Insurance. TriPoint Insurance is a local insurance brokerage offering customized insurance solutions to their clients. They offer personalized auto, home, and renters insurance, as well as commercial and business insurance, business owner general liability policies, worker compensation insurance, and commercial auto, to name a few. Currently licensed in Nevada, California, Arizona, and Utah. Gabby has more than 14 years of financial services experience, which helps her offer a holistic approach. Her clients view her as more than just their insurance agent, but a resource. TriPoint offers white glove, concierge-style insurance services and prides themselves in being client-centric. We believe that insurance should be simple and customers should feel comfortable asking questions. Shout out to Gabby, sponsoring another episode. If you guys didn't catch the Sisters episode, Family Matters, make sure you guys go back and check that out. It was a good one.
Yeah.
Super funny.
And again, like if you, whether it's your car insurance, your renter's insurance, your house insurance is definitely one of those things I think most of us have, but we don't understand. Gabby is called Google for a reason.
Yep.
She's an amazing asset, as well as if you're a business owner. Gabby has helped me so much when I was setting up my LLC, navigating those things. A lot of times you're paying lawyers lots of money to do that stuff. So if you're in that space, starting your own business or you own a business, call her and get a quote, talk to her. She is amazing and one of the most honest people I've ever known.
Yeah, she'll set you on the right path.
Yeah, she will.
Thank you, Gabby.
Thank you, Gabby.
Love you.
Love you, sister.
So I've been thinking about the Nessa and Marion episode when they were talking about how they call their mom and that's a win, or they call and talk to their family and that's a win.
Yeah.
So instead of us playing a game, like I think I should just call my mom.
Oh,
like she's got
right
the
now?
kids, but I think I'll just shoot her a call and just say what's up, see what she has to say. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my gosh.
I was gonna call her, but I think she's like better on
FaceTime
or Messenger. Let me see. Let me hit her up on the Facebook. If you guys don't follow my mom on Facebook, she be cooking and cleaning and cutting up fruit.
That's my favorite thing is when our mom goes on Facebook Live and she's like cutting fruit and whatnot. Like we'll go on and it's just a treat.
Let's see. It doesn't say that she's online, so
You're gonna FaceTime
she's
her?
probably running around chasing after the kids and see what she has to say.
Keep it close to the mic. Put it on speaker.
Do you think she's gonna answer?
I don't know.
Well, it'll like click over because it's on video, so it'll be like, oh man, my mom doesn't answer. You're gonna have to call your dad. Dang. We had this talk last night, right? We were like, who's gonna answer? Is my
so
mom
we
gonna
actually
answer?
this actually was because we were like, if I had to pay you $20 and you had to call someone, if they didn't answer, like you pay me, I had to pay you. Who
Would
would
it be?
say? I was
Yep.
like, oh, I call my dad. He answers.
Your dad will for sure answer. Well, I
Yeah.
guess you gotta call him. Or should I call your dad?
Yeah, you call. Because I'm pretty good about calling him. That's always very telling what you save people under your phone as. Omar
you
used
have
to
them
always
as?
save all of his clients in the beginning were their name and then fit.
Oh, here we go.
Like it'd be
Mr.
Quantum.
Foster,
Mark, what's up, Mark?
dude, that was so freaking funny. that clip was so freaking funny, dude.
So Mark, we got you on the podcast right now. Say what's up to the people.
Hey, what's happening?
So we're Aubi and I are filming right now, and I was gonna call my mom just to like say what's up and show her some love, but she didn't answer. So we were talking about who always answers the phone.
Mark McGee.
Mark McGee. It would be you.
Well, not always, but
Oh,
but
always.
I got a pretty high rating for my family. for
You
my
do,
kids.
and the time in which you respond back to text messages
Yes.
is really fast.
In
I
case,
mean-
if you need it in case of
Dude,
emergency
you're my
contact, you
family,
need my
man.
dad.
You guys are you're most important, man.
And you answered the phone like before one ring even finished. That's impressive.
Well, it's my kids calling, dude. If I was in a meeting, I would have answered and said, "Hey, I'm in a meeting. Is everything okay?"
Yes, exactly.
I love that. See, I love that about you, Mark. So we just want to call, man, tell you I love you. We're gonna be talking on this episode about us breaking generational curses. So should be a good one.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you,
And just
man.
wanted to
Good
say thank you for
buddy.
everything that you've done, Dad. Like from the podcast to just how you support us. Like we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. And we just love you
know
so
what?
much.
You guys are super talented. I just try to do what I can to be a source of support. You guys make it on your own. I have no doubt.
Love you, Mark.
We love you so much,
We'll talk to you
Daddy.
soon.
You guys, really, truly, I'm super proud of you guys. I can't even tell you.
We appreciate that. We'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Love you,
Bye, buddy.
Dad.
Have a good podcast.
Bye.
Bye. I'm going to cry early on this one. That was, I love him.
Man, if you need someone as an emergency contact,
Yes.
Mark McGee
Yeah.
is your guy.
And if you need any home remodeling as well.
Oh,
just
true
saying.
that. True that.
Plug
Sure,
Mac Builders one more time.
You guys know the drill. So today, we wanted to take the time to talk through our journey of breaking generational curses. We as a couple have been incredibly intentional about the manner in which we design our lives for our family. Like anything in this life, we believe that you have choices to make that craft the way your life looks and feels for you and your family. Do not mistake this for having total control of things around you, but know there is a required intentionality to a well-designed life. Aubi and I both come from very different backgrounds with different hurts, but there are some wounds we share. The hurts we face in life can be the thing that bonds us. They can become the reasons we repeat the cycle, or they can be the catalyst for a generational change. We can be the chain breakers of generational hurts, habits, and hangups, but it requires a commitment to do the work, to drop your ego, and to lean into God's guidance. This is a part of our story, a part of our why, and just us sharing. So maybe people don't feel so alone or feel like it's impossible to have a generational impact for their families. So we're going to dive into it. We had this discussion as far as what we wanted to talk about. In the last season, we had kind of like the our habits and our disciplines, and we had the how we saved our marriages. And I just thought it'd be cool to kind of like come on and talk about where we are in our lives now as parents and in our marriage, and how we want to overcome some of the things we went through and to break generational curses.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess I can start and just backtrack from the beginning of my biological dad splitting when I was 5. And now I look at Uriah because he's 6, and I'm like, man, I just couldn't imagine just dipping out on my son like at this time in life, you know, and like not having anything to do with him. And I was his only kid.
Yeah.
You know?
And he was in Vegas the whole time.
Yeah. And then after my biological father split, she met my stepdad when I was about 6, so maybe a year later. He came from the South, like big black guy, 6'2", 6'3", 275, just like a stallion, you know what I mean? You know, raised me in ways to be respectful, to be an entrepreneur, and to be a hustler. But there was also like a deeper side of it, and being like physically abused, you know?
Yeah.
And I just think about the way that like, I mean, I got beat as a kid, and I'm like, man, I just couldn't imagine doing that to our son now.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I would just go in and share. Like, my dad used to make me strip down butt naked and lay down in the bed, and he would make me grab a weight belt. And you know, it's crazy sometimes to see weight belts in the gym, because I'm like, man, like that's what I got beat with. You know, there was no structure to it. It would just be like, I don't know, it could be 5, it could be 10, it could be 15 lashings. And you know, I just look at Uriah at that age. I'm like, there's no way I could do that to him. Could you imagine? And it's crazy to look back now and to be 40 years old and to be like, man, that broke my spirit as a kid.
And I think for me, it's been like when we first started dating and we were, you know, sharing backgrounds and stories. I remember you sharing that side, and there was almost this disassociation to like how traumatic that was. And I remember looking at you with tear-filled eyes. Like, I still makes me want to cry, like knowing that's what you faced. And I would look at you with just such empathy. And I remember this disassociation side of you that was just, it was such a normal thing that you kind of would deflect my empathy or me calling it out for what it was, and just being like, okay, like I understand that your stepdad was a huge catalyst in a lot of the good that you have in your life and who you are. But at the same time, the brokenness that caused in you, and me being able to connect and see behaviors that were affecting our relationship or affecting your life, and you not even being able to realize that I had always seen it, I think, for what it was. And it's kind of been this like tragically beautiful thing to watch you kind of come to that realization and healing as well, of having our own kids and reflecting on the way that you were treated.
Yeah.
And realizing as well that like those things are cyclical.
Yeah.
So it's very likely that your stepdad was treated exactly the way he treated you and your siblings. And that probably came from his parents, which likely came from their parents.
Yeah.
It likely came from their parents, because that's generally how things like abuse get passed down until someone's brave enough and strong enough to feel it.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
get
Is that's
through it.
the silo that I lived in, so I
Yeah.
just thought it was normal. It's like, this is normal.
Totally.
This is what happens to people. And now that I'm a dad with a kid, I'm like, bro, man, that wasn't normal. But I'm not going to lie, in the beginning of having Uriah, I felt like the way I disciplined would have just been the way I disciplined him, because I'm like, I turned out fine. And
Yeah.
I think that's this world we live in where everyone goes, man, I turned out fine, so I'm going to do the same things that were done to me to the next generation, to my
Yeah.
kids. Unless you can pull back and become aware of that and realize, like, man, maybe that wasn't the best route. Maybe there were some, negative things that were caused, and some hurts and some traumas, caused from the way I treated or disciplined my kid,
Yeah.
that, you would break out of that and not repeat the cycle.
And I feel like while we share similar hurts, I didn't come from a family of any kind of physical abuse by any stretch. I had two very loving parents, but my mom was an addict. But there was like an emotional abuse that by nature, I think, comes with that. There's abandonment issues and instability that comes in that. Like, you didn't know. For me, I became so sensitive to even like if we would turn down our street, there wasn't street lights on our street growing up in Henderson. And there was this like tell sign whether or not my mom was drunk or not, because the front lights wouldn't be on.
Oh, yeah.
And if the front lights were on, I remember like pulling in, because we, all worked throughout high school and whatnot, and pulling into the driveway and just like having to take a deep breath because I didn't know what I was going to walk into. And she wasn't drunk all the time by any means. It would just sometimes, it started out like once a month and then progressively got worse from there as her addiction got worse and pills became involved, and her addiction just started to take hold more so. But there was this unpredictability of the parent that I was going to get, and this Jekyll and Hyde type of scenario. And I feel like there's almost a similarity in that with your stepdad. There's this part of him that was incredibly impactful in the way that he shaped you into the man that you are.
Yeah.
But there's this incredible hurt
That's another side to the story.
that's attached to it as well.
For sure. And the thing is, I'm the oldest sibling.
Yeah.
So I think when my younger siblings came around and stuff happened, like stuff happens with kids, things get broken, the house and things get messed up. And then I would almost be the one to blame, because I was in a sense responsible if I was supposed to be watching them. So then it would be like, why did your sister do this? And then I was the one getting punished and disciplined for it, So yeah, outside of the physical abuse and getting beat and wanting to break that curse, like my dad was also a drug dealer. So looking back on it now, I'm like, man, like random people and strangers would come over to the house, and my dad would just go to the room, like, go to your room. We have to go in there and shut the door, and we'd be in there for an hour just trying to figure out our own thing and whatever deals my dad's making. And then sometimes it wouldn't be like even announce or come and let us know that it was okay to come out. We would just hear the door close and there would be silence, and we would, come out and it would smell like weed. And, at that age, I mean, I was probably like 8 or 9 when that was going on.
Man.
You knew what the smell was, And again, I'm looking back now going like, I would never do that to our kids. I mean, you wouldn't allow it, A, but B, like, I just couldn't imagine having strangers coming in and the risk and the position you're putting your family in,
Yeah, for sure. And then I think even just the way that you raise our kids in terms of like access, right? Like, I remember you said it so nonchalantly when we were first dating about like, yeah, like my dad was a drug dealer, and he always let me know that like, hey, if you ever want to test this out, like by all means, like get it from me, because I don't want you at a party randomly trying it. And my jaw was like on the ground because I had been around addiction, but it was in a very different capacity, that it was hidden. It was a secret. It was not paraded. Like, while my mom drank and took pills at a different point, like it was all undercover. And that added to like my own trauma of like what reality actually was, and if I was like crazy or not, because you definitely felt like that. It was very different than the exposure you have, where it was like so nonchalant. Like, you curious what this tastes like, and he got you drunk at 12 for the first time.
Well, looking back on it now, it was like, since he had the supply and knew that people laced, whatever drugs it was with certain things. He was like, hey, I don't want you to go out and be curious and do this with your friends at a party and get laced up with something crazy and then really end up in trouble. So
just get in trouble with me.
Yeah, totally. Just get in trouble with me and try here at the house. But that was my take on it, and that's my angle. But the same thing with alcohol. It's like I got curious to drink one time when I was probably 12. I was like, hey, can I taste a sip of the beer? I just wanted a sip, And he was like, this is the moment. Go to the cabinet and get a big gulp cup. That was back when everyone saved big gulp cups, and he was like, I'm gonna fill it up. And it was like a 32-ounce big gulp, and he poured it there. My dad and his friends were playing dominoes. He was like, there's no rush, just sit there and drink that till it's done, And I finished this cup, and I'm like pretty much sick and drunk and on the verge of puking, and then he fills it up again and makes me drink 32 ounces. It's probably 64 ounces. Probably not the best thing to do now that I'm looking back on it. But
probably
the thing was, like, alcohol after that and beer specifically was like absolutely disgusting. Like the thought of it, the smell of it, to see the sight of it, I was like, yeah, I want nothing to do with that. I don't think I had my first beer as an adult until I met you, maybe.
Oh, okay.
I mean, like in my, I don't know, 28, 29, I had my first beer,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then you were talking about addiction. It's like my dad didn't have an alcohol addiction, but he was addicted to gambling. So that caused a lot of friction and turmoil and conflict with him and my mom, where he would go and take her paycheck, you know what I mean, and try to go to the casino to double up, This would be a constant thing and a constant battle. And then if we were broke, my mom had decent jewelry from Cambodia, like real quality gold.
And not just that, like sentimental.
Total sentimental value, but take and pawn our jewelry and, pawn a $500 piece for $80 to go and try to gamble it to see if you can win at some Keno or something like that,
Yeah.
And now that I'm thinking about it again, even more so, it's like, there was points and there was reward systems when all the station casinos opened up, right? So we would go to buffets and eat and be living like royalty, and our parents would hand us Keno cards, And I mean, at the time it was like, okay, this is fun. We can all play this game, but like how to think about how that could continue that generational path, of the addiction of gambling. Like if I would have stayed on that road, I mean, it's so easy. Like it's clearly an issue here in Vegas,
Totally.
When the fun stops, there's brochures over every casino and even gas stations,
Well, and I think that's the hard thing about when we talk about generational curses. It creeps up on you, almost like when we talked about in our marriage episode talking about divorce. Like I think I always thought of like addiction or the cyclical unhealthy things that we witnessed growing up, like whether it was divorce or communication issues or past hurts and whatnot that have been passed down generation over generation. I always thought it was going to be just this obvious thing that would show up in my life, and I would be able to identify like, oh, that's the slippery slope. That's the path. Like that's the journey. And the reality is, like anything, if you lack self-awareness and self-growth and getting yourself outside of the cycles and circles that you're accustomed to, you never are even aware of it, and it will happen easier than you think. Like I look back on my party days of overconsumption and just thinking I was living, and it was such a normalized thing, like being in Vegas, being in the industry, being at really cool brands that had a lot of access. And I never thought I could turn out like my mom in terms of addiction. And I look back now and it's like, dude, I was playing with fire.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it because it was wrapped in a different package with different people, and everyone around me was doing the same things.
Yep.
And I remember there was a point before you and I met, I was going out I was going out 6 nights a week when we met, for the record. But my family in particular sat down, my dad and my sisters and everyone, my stepmom Chame, and they all sat down and they were just like concerned with me. It was like a mini intervention of just like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like our whole family was destroyed by this, and you're being so reckless and careless around it. And of course, at the time I was so offended, and I was just like, you guys don't understand. Like, and it was such a normal thing around it. And I look back now, and especially having children, and I just am so grateful for the commitment that my entire family unit had to change after the loss of my mom and the loss of our family and our parents divorcing, because it wasn't just me. My dad, my sisters, like we all in our own path, in our own way, were set out to change that for our own personal self. But it creeped up and happened so much easier than I thought. And I wasn't aware that, well, I know the stat is 1 in 3 kids. If you come from addiction, it's likely that 1 in 3 kids, you have a 33% chance of having some kind of addictive habit as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's 3 kids in my family, and I didn't realize that like I was setting myself up to be the one.
Oh, wow.
You know?
Yeah.
And having enough love from them to first, I think, bring it to my attention. But I think what really changed was when you and I got into couples therapy and we were trying to save our marriage, because those topics weren't just individual anymore. It was really having to examine like how they were showing up in our life in a different package, but the same habits, the same cycles, the same anger, the same hurts, the same habits were still there. And it took us getting into therapy, I think, really to, as a collective, identify what those generational curses were that we were fighting against, but then not just identifying them, creating a strategy against that on how we were going to, as a couple, work together diligently to design a life for ourselves and our children that were different. Pastor Jabin at City Light says, and shout out to D. Witters, he shared this the other day at our family dinner, but he said, Pastor Jabin loves to say that our ceiling is your children's floor. So you've got to press that ceiling of your life as high as you can to give the opportunity, because that's the starting point for your kids. And so if you're not motivated to do it for yourself and you have children, that generational impact and change starts with your intentionality. It starts with you being incredibly honest. And sometimes it's having to, I think, separate the natural protective nature that you have of your home of origin to still give honor to your parents if they did the best that they could with what they had, but being willing to acknowledge the areas that it's like, we got to give a little more, we got to do a little better. And it's a hard thing, because I think as much as my mom's addiction hurt me, and as much as your dad's addiction and abuse hurt you, we love them. And if it wasn't for them, like, there was still so much good that came from them, and there was so much love that was still there, but it's their hurt and their own trauma. And it doesn't excuse the behavior, but it's being able to elevate out of that and realize that, like, you can still love where you came from, or maybe you don't, but if you do, it's like you can still love and you can still have gratitude for that. But it's also a really healthy thing to examine where you came from and identify what you don't want to do. Bring the good forward. But you have to kind of get vulnerable and get deep and drop the ego and drop the overprotectiveness that you may have of your parents, to also identify like where the shortfalls were and how you can better that, whether you have children or not. It's a hard, but it's a healing process.
Yeah, that's good. So good, Boo. Way to explain that. Man, you're so good. So the first generational curse we want to break, or we are going to break, is divorce.
Absolutely.
You know, and I realized to not have like a good example set, you know, sometimes I envy or get jealous of friends. Well, not anymore, but I used to, like friends who had parents who are still together. But now I hear that, I'm like, man, that's so good for you. Like, because I can't wait to be that for my kids, to still be together, you know? Because growing up, I mean, there was always so much turmoil and fights and conflict. Like, my mom would, you know, yell and scream and get into fights, and then she'd be like, I'm out. And then we would, you know, she would go to a hotel somewhere, and, you know, being a mama's boy and the oldest kid, I'm like, yeah, I'm out. I'm with my mom. Like, I'm protecting her, so I'm going to go with her. So to go back and forth between conflict and confrontation and moving out of the house and then moving back, and then eventually them splitting and getting divorced, probably right after I graduated high school, you know, I didn't really have
right
like
before
an
you
example.
left for the military.
Yeah, I didn't really have an example of what like a marriage looked like, and to fight for their relationship and to make it through the long haul, you know?
Yeah, you're definitely part of, I think, like your hurt is the lone wolf nature. We talk about that quite a bit. And I didn't understand it for the longest time, on how we could be so close and so in tune and then have conflict, and you would bail like that. You were the bailer. Like, and I have a huge mom hurt or an emotional abandonment. Like, my mom was physically there, but emotionally abandoning my needs because of her addiction or different things that she was going through. And it was such a, like, where we talked about this in the marriage episode, where it's like your hurts kind of line up. And I would never understand this nature of that you had of not needing me or not being committed. And it took therapy and understanding, and I think growth for both of us, for me to realize, like, wait a second, as a kid, you didn't have people fighting for you in the moments that you needed it. And you had to figure out a lot of that on your own.
Yep.
And there's nothing harder as a kid than to feel alone when you're hurting.
Yep.
And if you can get through that, then as a grown adult, nothing feels that scary.
Yeah, for sure.
Like you don't need anyone. And while I think there's a little bit of that can be healthy, it was to such an extreme that you would burn it down.
Yeah.
Like you didn't care, it didn't matter the history that you had.
Yeah, and it's like along the lines of having that lone wolf mentality, but there was also like a big lack of self-worth for me.
Totally.
So it wouldn't necessarily be personal to you. It's just like, hey man, like I didn't feel valued as a kid. Like why would I feel valued as an adult? Like you will be fine without me. And that's the burn it down mentality of like, yeah, I'll just shut down and like not communicate with you until eventually I push you away.
Yeah.
Which I mentioned last night. I think like one of the main reasons why we are still together is because you fought for us when I tried to break things off when we were dating, you know?
Yeah, a few
I'm
times.
like, oh, that's a wrap. Like I'm not even gonna talk to her. Like this is gonna be a wrap. I'm just gonna drive her car. And then she's like, I'm coming to your house. She knocks on my door. My brother Felix answers. I'm like, hey bro, tell her I'm not here.
I was like, I know your brother's here. My car's here. He's borrowing it.
Yes,
Tell him to
for
come to the
sure.
door.
Yeah. Thank you for fighting for us.
Oh, I got that. And I definitely got that from my dad. I mean, I watched my dad fight for my mom. He fought for her. And he fought for us, you know? And I watched him, I think, subject himself to too much hurt because of his own inability to see his worth. But I knew it was out of the utmost love for my mom and our family. And so I've always had that tenacity in me. Like, when I love you and you're in my circle, I will fight for you. I will fight for when I see potential or when I can see past the hurt or like the why.
Yeah.
And I think as much hurt as your lone wolf nature caused us and as much damage as it caused us, I stayed because I think God put it on my heart that I knew who you were, like who you really were, like underneath all of it, all of the hurt. And my parents' divorce was a little bit different than your experience, but a broken home nonetheless. My parents split when I was 19, so similar age. But it was different in the sense that my parents had been together kind of on and off since they were 12. And so for me, that was the ultimate love story. You know, they met when they were 12. They started kind of dating on and off at 16. They had their own turmoil, got married at 21, had Gabby at 23, me at 25. And so I just couldn't imagine a world where they weren't together. And then my dad, like I said, had fought so hard for my mom that I guess I always thought that they would figure it out.
Got it.
And then when it came to a breaking point that was no longer an option, we moved out pretty swiftly. And we went with my dad. And I mean, the pain that I saw it causing him, and then the pain that it obviously causes in any child. Like, even if I think divorce is for the better of your children, like there's still so much loss. You know, I am a huge proponent for marriage, but I think there are certain circumstances where it takes two people. And when there's not two people fighting for it, that it's like, there's only so much you can do.
Yep.
But I know for myself, when we decided to get married, I knew that I wanted it to be forever. And like we talked about in the marriage episode, I didn't know how much work it was going to require and how much change it was going to require and how much intentionality and honesty about your hurts, hangups, and habits it was going to take to really break through that cycle. And we definitely talked about a lot of this topic in particular on the How We Saved Our Marriage episode. So if you are in a season of challenge, not just because it's our episode, we've just gotten a lot of feedback. I think it's a great resource to maybe go back and listen to, but I think we want to touch on some of the strategies that we've implemented around how we're breaking that generation of divorce. My parents were both divorced. My dad's mom left his dad, who was abusive, his biological father that was abusive, to marry who I knew as my grandfather and who adopted my dad. My mom's dad was an immigrant from Greece. He had addiction issues as well. Her mom had mental health issues, and she grew up watching them abuse each other and getting divorced. And her mom had committed suicide when she was 11, and just that the trauma that just gets passed down generationally, and watching broken homes and how it impacted not just my sisters and I, seeing how it impacted my parents, assuming how it impacted their parents, because again, all of that stuff trickles down.
Yep.
And so being aware of it is one thing, acknowledging your part in it and your choice to, again, either bond with someone over it. Because I think initially we almost trauma bonded, like our wounds matched up. And so that was the bond. And then we went into the repeating of the certain cycles that we were doing from our home of origin, whether it was lack of communication, self-righteousness, inability to communicate, all of those
stonewalling
things. Stonewalling, me being codependent. That was like another one. But then doing the work on the other side of it to be like, okay, like we are going to be the chain breakers of this.
Yeah. And some of those things we do to break those chains were put God at the center of our marriage.
100%.
Rooted in our faith.
Absolutely.
And then we threw the divorce word completely off the table because we got to a point where it's like, I'm not going to leave you. Like, we're here to break this curse, and I love you with all my heart. We have kids. We are in this. Like, we got married. We had vows and said them for a reason. So once we kind of took that off the table, you know, because I feel like we would get into cyclical fights and it would kind of come up.
The soundbite. What are we doing?
Why'd you marry me anyways?
Yeah. Well, maybe you need to find someone else. And like all the empty threats. But I think I want to touch on this as well. When you are married, if you are saying I do until death do us part, I want to be married to you till I take my last breath. I will be married to you until I take my last breath. So God willing, I make it to 85. Right? We got 46 years until that happens. A bad 6 month ain't nothing when you look at the big picture. And I think we live in a short attention span, my truth, my needs, like kind of a very self-centered world that sometimes you can have a bad 6 month, a bad year, a bad 18 months. And it's like, that's it. I'm out. I can't deal with this anymore. And the reality is not every season's going to be easy.
Yeah. Short season.
It's a short season when you're looking at the collective. And I always try to keep that in the forefront. If we go through seasons where it's like, maybe we're not fighting, but we're not like in lockstep, it's bringing awareness and having the communication and ability to be able to shift and change as needs shift and change. Because as you grow, as you mature, as you go to different seasons with different challenges, your needs as a partner are different. Your needs, once you have kids, are different. Your schedules are different. Your rhythms are different. And being able to drop your ego enough to realize that maybe it's not that you're doing things wrong, but you're not giving that person what they need in that season. And then keeping the long game in mind. 46 years. Like, I want to be the couple at whatever wedding that gets to be like the last dance because we made it and we like are still out there getting jiggy with it. I
always get excited when I go and shoot weddings. And I'm like, oh man, someone's been together for 40, 50 years. Let's go.
It makes me wish we got married earlier to like have more time. But looking at that long game in mind, 6 months ain't nothing.
Yeah, true that.
And we are in a time and space and culture where immediate gratification is at the forefront of thought. Like, it is the quickest route to get rich, quickest route to lose weight, quickest route for success.
Shortcut.
Yes, shortcuts all around, that we see it showing up in our personal relationships, especially in marriage. And I think having that long-term goal in mind, it's a slow and steady wins the race kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's changing your language. Change your language, change your life. Like the words that you speak, the words that you think have power to yourself, but man, do they have power on other people.
Yeah.
Especially when it's supposed to be the person that you're the most committed to.
Yeah, true that.
So we ain't getting divorced. Fosters till the end, until death do us part. Like, that's it. You got to go first, though, 'cause I don't want to live without you.
Wasn't necessarily a marriage episode, but we were talking about breaking the curse of divorce. The next thing for me, number 2, would have been the physical abuse. Not going to dive into that any deeper than I've already explained, but to caveat and to work on not being the same way and disciplining the same way that I was disciplined, it takes work, like you said. Like, I mean, reading a parenting book doesn't sound like something that I thought I would do. You know what I mean?
How many parenting books did we like rip through though? We went through
there was one year probably ripped through 6 of them, you know?
At least in like 6 months.
1, 2, 3 Magic, No Drama Discipline, what else? I read the Bringing Up Boys, Bringing Up Girls. Both of those books were amazing just to give you insight into how boys work and operate, and the same thing with girls. But I'm not gonna lie, before having kids, I thought we would have more of a structured spanking routine, you know? I just assumed that, dude, kids, they gonna have to get a spanking.
They gonna need a whooping.
They
gonna need a whooping.
We talked about, what do we have? We have a spoon? Was that how we started?
Yeah, it started.
We had a spoon, and I would try to be like, all right, he's, you know, he pushed the line, he pushed the boundary, like he's on his third strike or whatever the case may be. And I was so soft about it. I would negotiate how hard the spankings would be with Uriah. I'm like, I'm going to give you one on your hand just like this. And he'd be like, Dad, can it be like this?
Like a tap.
No, it's gonna be like
not
that.
even a spanking. It's like a tap.
And then just through reading the 1 through 3 Magic, we switched over into 3 count and putting him into break time. And that has seasons as well, where sometimes it works, and it worked really well for a month or two. And then we're
especially
like,
at a certain age, I think 1, 2, 3 Magic. Like if again, it's not for everyone. And I remember my mom counting at me, and I think it literally kind of came from this concept without the actual true application.
Yep.
It's giving a 3 count, but it's allowing structure for your kid just to have awareness, especially when they're at an age where they maybe don't understand where the boundaries are, and being swift with it. And then it's even then the way that you communicate. So we definitely started in that kind of 1, 2, 3 Magic thing, and then shifting over into now I think it's really more like, I don't believe in discipline for mistakes when there's a teachable moment and they genuinely didn't know what they were doing, but we absolutely discipline around rebellion.
Yeah, true that.
And I think that's kind of been a helpful discernment for us of there is structure, and I would say that we're fairly strict on the things that we want for our children, but it's putting ourselves in their shoes and thinking about how does that translate into their self-worth? The way that you talk to them is how they're going to talk to themselves. So if they're making a mistake and you're saying something like, what's wrong with you? Like, you don't even realize you're saying it because maybe they like dropped something all over, or they broke something that's important to you, or they've ruined something of your, or whatever, like the things that little kids will do, and starting to become so aware again of the language that we're using towards them. And it's not like foul language, just true structure of language, because that is how they will talk to themselves when they're making mistakes. And so we think about when they make a mistake, if it's in a learning capacity and they're learning boundaries or learning whatever, how do you make it really constructive so they learn that it was a mistake, we don't do that, but this is the redirection of what we do, versus rebellion, like talking back and saying no and being defiant. That's like 2 different things in the way that you handle that. And I think that's been very helpful. But if you don't have a resource or you don't know what to do, pick up a book.
True that.
Like,
there's tons of resources.
We got like a library at our house.
Yeah.
If anybody
Hit us
wants to
up if you
borrow
need
any,
anything.
there's different ways for different approaches that work for your kid. Every kid is different. Every family is different. But that was a journey that we were willing to admit that we didn't know what we were doing and that we needed some help and guidance. And we're still learning and still reading books and podcasts as our kids enter into different phases.
Yeah, for sure.
But we are committed to not giving them the emotional and physical abuse that we both kind of went through because of our parents' own hurts.
Yeah, true that.
We're going to pass on different hurts.
Yeah. So we've got a deep dive. We can go into addiction, which we don't want to, we're running short on time. So maybe we'll do a segment like on our own and dive deeper into addiction to close that out. And then we'll wrap up the rest of the episode maybe in that segment as well, which could be really fun for us to do. Yeah. So let's just go ahead and close it out with, what are you obsessed with? Obsession of the week.
Obsession of the week. This week, I am actually really obsessed with my new morning routine. O talks about it all the time. Me being the primary caretaker of the kids, I think sometimes my mornings are a little bit more chaotic if I'm home with the kids. Selah loves to sneak into our bed. And so even when I'm trying to get up early before her, a lot of times she'll wake up and she'd come down. And I was kind of using that as an excuse to not jump right in and prioritize some of the things to help my mindset.
Yeah.
It like to set myself on a path for a good day. And I really made a commitment after the Marianne and Nestor episode, actually like listening to that back and being like, man, like that is an area I can improve on. And what a difference it's made. So in the morning, I intentionally go out to the backyard. I get sunlight in my eyes first thing in the morning. My phone is on airplane mode.
Love it.
I use it. I'll use it for music, but I'm not checking notifications, text messages, emails, Instagram, any of those things. And I was going outside and I've been journaling, reading my Bible, and just getting some quiet time. Mm-hmm. And it's been a really beautiful thing. I've been sending you photos.
Yeah.
Just this week alone of I was carving out that time, and then Selah would come out. And then Uriah would come out. And it wasn't like I asked them to bring their journals or anything. And next thing I know, they both have their journals and they both bring out their little, Uriah's got an action Bible and Selah's got a say and pray one. And they're bringing it out. And neither one of them can obviously read fully yet, like what they're looking at. But it's just seeing the impact, again, generational curses and changing the mindset of like how you start your day and really crafting and designing a life and not just being victim to the circumstance. And for me, number one, it sets my priorities straight of what the day needs to look like. I'm so grateful for God's goodness. I'm so grateful for my children. And then I'm so motivated by seeing how one shift in me, the trickle down effect it has on my kids.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. It's been my favorite thing to see you do is for me to come downstairs and see you out journaling, having your own quiet time, being intentional about that. And then B, like if I'm at work and you send me the photo, it brings me so much joy because I love that for you because I can see it sets a tone for your day on a better route. It's amazing.
It's been such a change. And again, like I struggle with depression and anxiety like pretty badly. And I have seasons that those are harder, especially if my health is kind of up and down. It takes such a wear just not on my body, but on my mind. And I think the enemy attacks me in those seasons and in those moments of vulnerability. And man, like what a difference that has made just in my ability to adapt and change with my kids and not realizing that the mindless scrolling and the mindless getting kind of sucked into where the world is at, which is so tense anymore.
Yeah, for sure.
The negativity that puts at the like at the forefront and filter of what you're doing, where it's like I just feel this lightness about me now. And I have my morning routine kind of looks like this. I come downstairs, I make my lemon water with salt. I go outside, I have my journal and my Bible. And sometimes I'll bring out a book if I have like a little extra time. And it's that quiet time. I put on some worship music. I journal, I read. I'm committed to get through the Bible this year. Only 2% of Americans do that. And you know that the Fosters like to be in the top 1%. So I'm going to read it twice, at least. But I've been doing that. And then having that moment with the kids, like it just changes the whole cadence in which I operate throughout my day and the filter. It's been beautiful. So we should do a morning routine challenge, post it.
Yeah.
Let me know how you like it.
I'll keep it quick. Frank Forrest's new album, Child
Forrest
of God.
Frank?
What did I say?
Frank Forrest.
Forrest
Sorry
Frank. My fault. I'm actually wearing a No Longer Bound shirt by Forrest Frank. Dude, you got to check out the Child of God album. It is absolutely amazing. So we're going to go see him in concert in Riverside next month. I'm so excited. We're taking the kids. It's going to be so much fun. But that's my obsession of the week. And I'll let you just close out with some gratitude and on with the good word.
So this week, I'm super grateful for Omar. I mean, I'm always thankful for you, but it's like, man, letting you lead us has been the best shift in my life, in our lives, in our marriage, in our home. And I am an alpha female by nature, and it has not been the easiest shift, but it has absolutely been worth it. You've pushed us in the gym. You've pushed our business. You pushed us to do this podcast.
Yeah.
And I get to see the fruits of that labor, and I get to be one of the beneficiaries of it. So for me, and probably anyone that has ever interacted with you, they've had an impact on, like, I'm super grateful for you. I'm grateful that while you went through all that hard stuff, like, man, pressure made diamonds and you a diamond.
I love that. Thank you so much, Boo.
I love
Appreciate
you.
it. That wraps up episode 16. Tell them the good news, Boo.
Know that you guys are made with a purpose, on purpose, and we're thankful that you spend your time with us.
Bring it in. Fit Force, you know woo on 3. 1, 2, 3. Fit Force, you know woo.